I'm still, after all the fights you've had, in awe of the fact that you do what you do. It's mind blowing to me.
Thank you, man. Yeah. I mean, it's not that hard to get to beat, but it was a great experience. Like, I learned a lot in there. I can't really talk.
When this fight was first announced, you had said something to the effect of this would end Jake Paul's career. After what you saw tonight, do you think that Jake should continue to box, or what do you think the future holds for him?
Yeah, no, I really take my hat off to. I mean, we have to see if it is a broken jaw. Those injuries are very difficult to come back from. But as AJ said, look, that last shot would have knocked out a lot of heavyweights.
So here's what just went down that has every single person in combat sports completely losing their minds right now. Jake Paul, this 28-year-old internet sensation who transformed himself into a legitimate professional boxer, has apparently called it quits from the sport entirely. This bombshell comes directly after what can only be called a career-ending sixth-round knockout loss to former heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua in Miami. We're not talking about your average defeat here, people. This was absolutely savage. Paul didn't just get outboxed, he was carried out with a jaw broken in 2 places that needed emergency surgery immediately. Picture this for a moment. This guy walked into that fight as this massive crossover phenomenon, somebody who'd been gaining serious credibility and working to prove he belonged among real professional fighters, not just some internet celebrity messing around for views. Then Joshua unleashed this crushing right hand that finished everything in dramatic fashion, and now we're all wondering if Jake Paul's boxing journey is completely finished. Here's an interesting detail that has everyone talking. Paul actually took 2 rounds on one official's scorecard before that knockout punch flipped the script completely, proving he was holding his own before Joshua ended his night permanently.
And then I got dropped. But yeah, I was doing good. I just think my cardio, just the mental pressure of the big guy and sparring the big people is different than the 10-ounce gloves. So I was feeling his power a lot more. But it was a great experience. Like, I learned a lot in there. I can't really talk.
Are you in pain?
Yeah, but it's not from like talking.
Talk to me about what your jaw feels like, because you got
It's like a baseball in there.
two plates.
It just feels like
4 titanium plates.
4 titanium plates. How many do you have?
Just 1.
Wait, because this story gets way more intense and honestly pretty disturbing from a medical standpoint. There's audio making the rounds where somebody mentions something about a titanium rod in someone's hand, adding even more drama to an already chaotic situation. But here's what we can confirm, and it's genuinely alarming. Jake Paul has supposedly told people in his inner circle that he's completely burned out and psychologically exhausted from absorbing the kind of severe damage that comes with competing at the elite level, and he's seriously thinking about retiring from boxing forever. This choice apparently became clear after that vicious knockout we just discussed, and vicious doesn't even cover how bad it was. This wasn't simply a defeat, it was a systematic beating. Paul hit the canvas several times during the contest, and each time he managed to get back up, you could watch the punishment accumulating. Then came that final crushing blow that shattered his jaw in multiple places, requiring immediate surgical repair and sparking all this talk about whether he'll ever fight professionally again. The kind of damage he took from one of boxing's most accomplished and dangerous heavyweights, someone like Anthony Joshua who's dominated at the championship level for years, has apparently forced Paul to seriously question whether this is something he wants to keep pursuing. And honestly, who could criticize that decision? There's even footage circulating where someone clearly states they're retiring from boxing, which has only added more fuel to all the speculation. The whole thing is just
hit in the fucking face every single day while I could be playing soccer in Saudi. I'm friends with the Saudis slash football.
Back in the day?
I was in 18th and 7th grade.
I have a really good kick. I can run fast, and I'll knock out everyone that f***s with us.
Then there's this completely bizarre statement, something about someone needing $1 billion to prove some kind of message, which sounds totally insane, right? But let's focus on what the promoters and boxing insiders are actually saying about this whole mess, because their responses show you exactly how serious this situation has become. Eddie Hearn, who was heavily involved in organizing this fight and never holds back his opinions, didn't try to walk back his earlier prediction about what this matchup could do to Jake Paul's career, but you could tell, after witnessing the actual fight, that his attitude changed to something much more somber and thoughtful when he reflected on his pre-fight comment about how this bout might genuinely end Jake Paul's time in boxing. Hearn admitted that what happened, as difficult as it was to watch, unfortunately validated his concerns exactly. He wasn't celebrating being correct about his prediction. He was genuinely worried, breaking down how injuries like a fractured jaw, particularly a double fracture requiring surgical reconstruction with metal plates and hardware, aren't just incredibly painful right after they happen, they're emotionally and physically extremely challenging to come back from, especially for someone who's still learning and attempting to prove himself at the highest levels of professional boxing. He explained that the rehabilitation isn't just waiting for bones to mend, it's all the months you spend unable to spar, which means your timing gets sloppy, your reactions get slower, and your flow in the ring falls apart. Beyond that, there's the mental aspect, the worry about getting hurt again that gets into your head every time you take a punch to the face, which can completely and permanently change how a fighter approaches the sport and their willingness to take risks in close exchanges. Although Hearn did recognize Jake's courage and his real commitment to facing legitimate competition, something many doubters claimed he'd never actually do, Hearn emphasized that boxing is a completely merciless business that doesn't care about your internet fame or your financial success. Moments like this knockout, these defining instances where you suffer major injuries, frequently make fighters step back and genuinely evaluate whether the physical danger and permanent health risks are really worth whatever recognition or prize money might come from staying active.
Look, that guy did great for someone who's been boxing for like less than a decade. He has had no real professional opponents other than Tommy Fury that were legitimate world-class boxers.
I don't even remember what happened in the Tommy.
He lost a close decision, but it was a good fight. It was a good fight, though. He's a good boxer. If he wasn't a YouTuber, people would be way more impressed with him.
Yeah.
The problem is he was like a famous kid, and then no one took him seriously.
Yeah.
But
and then he started too with like more spectacle-ish fights. People were like, "Oh, this is you." He fought, Nate Robinson, like a basketball player.
But the thing is, he knocked Nate Robinson.
He knocked him the fuck out.
And
The way everything unfolded, that made me want to warn people. Joe Rogan, who's been calling combat sports for decades and has witnessed basically everything that can happen to a fighter, gave what's probably the most serious and warning-filled response from anyone. After Jake Paul got knocked unconscious by Anthony Joshua and sustained that double jaw fracture we keep discussing, Rogan, speaking on his show with that characteristic blend of real worry and straight talk, encouraged Paul to think carefully and seriously about the long-term effects of continuing his boxing journey at this elite level. When Joe Rogan advises you to be cautious about brain damage, you should definitely pay attention because this man has observed countless fighters get destroyed by the brutality of combat sports. Rogan stressed that the beating Paul took in that contest, particularly those massive headshots from an experienced heavyweight like Anthony Joshua, who's been competing at world championship levels for years, involves dangers that extend far beyond the obvious damage we can observe, like the broken jaw. He was pointing out there's a cost you pay neurologically and physically that builds up over time and simply isn't worth it for someone who has alternative paths and chances in life. Rogan discussed the serious long-term problems that many fighters deal with once their careers end. Issues like chronic traumatic encephalopathy, cognitive problems, emotional disorders, all the conditions we're discovering more about as our understanding of brain trauma improves. He characterized the specific knockout shot that Paul absorbed from Joshua as delivering the impact of, and I'm quoting directly, like 10 punches all focused into one devastating blow, which is a frightening way to consider what that does to your brain bouncing around inside your skull. Rogan emphasized how rapidly serious harm can build up in the ring, particularly at heavyweight where the power exists on a totally different plane than smaller weight divisions. His point wasn't just about this individual fighter or this single injury. It was a wider alert that continuously absorbing punishment at this professional level, especially from elite heavyweights, can create lasting and possibly irreversible impacts on your mental function and life quality, and that Paul should very carefully think about whether staying on this road is worth the danger when he has so many other opportunities for achievement open to him.
That I'm a cokehead. My rebuttal to that was, I'll tell you what, you can test me randomly for the next 5 years if I can test you randomly for performance enhancing the next 2 years, and I never got a response on that.
This is why Jake Paul is on PEDs. Within this past year, Jake Paul has literally hit a second puberty and aged like 10 years. Furthermore, he has acne and his hairline is receding like crazy. And people like Jake Paul are going to the best skin doctors in the world and probably are taking hair loss products that aren't even approved for the rest of us. Now, I'm not saying that Jake Paul necessarily took a steroid to make him look bigger, but he's definitely taking something that allows him to recover faster. That way he's able to train more and get better at boxing quickly.
Here's something that sounds completely insane and has people confused, wondering if it's legitimate or just Paul being controversial like he's always done. That was skillful, by the way, talking about something in the fight that grabbed attention. But listen to this. Paul has also reportedly claimed, based on stories spreading online and through different indirect sources, that he's thinking about using a steroid cycle as a method to shut down the persistent accusations that have been chasing him around. The allegations that he's already been taking performance-enhancing substances throughout his boxing career. Based on the online discussions and indirect reports we're seeing, Paul suggested that by actually demonstrating to people the obvious difference between his natural build and what he'd look like enhanced, that would somehow prove that his previous physique and performances were accomplished naturally without any artificial help. Critics are saying that the statement sounds completely dangerous and provocative, the type of thing that could get him in major trouble with boxing authorities and potentially expose him to legal problems. Meanwhile, his fans think Paul is simply fighting back in his own aggressive style against years of rumors, suggestions, and outright accusations about his physical transformation and the power he displayed in his earlier boxing fights. Considering that boxing has incredibly strict anti-doping policies and procedures, and considering the severe penalties connected to performance-enhancing drug violations in the sport, including bans, financial penalties, and having your victories stripped, many observers stay highly doubtful about whether Paul would actually go through with this statement. Others are warning against accepting the claim literally at all, suggesting it might just be Paul creating drama like he's built his whole brand doing. Until Paul personally addresses the allegation officially, sits down and clarifies exactly what he intended and whether he's being serious, the comment stays completely unconfirmed and just creates another layer of drama and confusion to what's already been an incredibly chaotic period in his boxing career. It makes it that I snore, which honestly makes no sense whatsoever, but somehow matches the bewilderment of this entire situation.
The people need to respect him. I don't say that only because I'm fight here in a company, but it's because Jake, the people need to respect Jake, you know. I mean, every single fight go inside the ring, everybody need respect.
Let's break down the actual details of what went down in that ring, because the specifics are honestly pretty disturbing when you hear them spelled out. Anthony Joshua completely shattered Jake Paul's jaw during their heavyweight clash in Miami, and we're talking about one particular moment, one specific punch that transformed everything. It occurred when Joshua landed this absolutely crushing right hand, the same knockout weapon that's finished so many opponents throughout his championship run, connecting perfectly in the 6th round with the type of accuracy and force that only world-class heavyweights can produce. The shot caused an instant knockdown. Paul collapsed to the mat and eventually resulted in the knockout conclusion that finished the fight. But the harm from that Joshua punch extended far beyond just dropping him. The strike broke Paul's jaw in 2 different spots, creating what medical professionals describe as a double fracture, which is a serious and incredibly agonizing injury that was instantly obvious to everyone watching once the fight was over. You could clearly see something was drastically wrong with Paul's face. The damage was later verified by Paul's own social media update, where he actually displayed the injury, the swelling, the distortion, all of it visible, and honestly hard to witness. Once the contest finished and the medical staff examined him, Paul was rushed straight to a Miami hospital, where surgeons conducted what sounds like pretty complex surgery to fix the double fracture. The operation required installing 2 titanium plates, one on each side of his jaw to secure the broken bones in position during healing, and here's the detail that really shows how severe this was. They had to extract multiple teeth during the surgical process. Several teeth lost because of the trauma from that single punch. Paul shared an update from his hospital room, explaining the surgery went well according to his medical team, and that he would be restricted to liquid nutrition for roughly a week at minimum, potentially longer based on how his recovery progresses, while he heals from having his jaw literally rebuilt with metal hardware.
Don't ever
give a monkeys about what anyone says, because they sit at home, they're full of negativity. It's like the people that are negative towards someone like Jake Paul. Look at what he's done with his life. Do you know what I mean? So yes, it took AJ a couple of rounds to get hold of him, and then he knocked him spark out and broke his jaw. It was a frustrating 2-3 rounds maybe, because Jake was moving so much, holding, but did well, I thought. I mean, I was impressed with him. I mean, I was more impressed with his toughness, because I think that last shot would have knocked out most heavyweights. I mean, you've got to respect him, because he did what many people wouldn't do, which was get in the ring with him. And, you know, he didn't, I know he run and hold, but he also let his hands go at times. And he was in the firing line, and, you know, we got 6 good rounds in the end of actual work.
You see it in the end?
Yeah, I actually think it's a positive, because, you know, we could have gone in there and got it all over with 45 seconds. He's done an 8-week camp, and now he's done 6 rounds. He's got something to go back and work on with the team, and onwards and upwards for a big 2026.
Finally, with all the rumors and conspiracy theories that always seem to surround Jake Paul's boxing fights, let's tackle the obvious question that people keep raising online. The devastating 6th round knockout of Jake Paul by Anthony Joshua proved once and for all, without any question, that the fight was completely legitimate and absolutely not staged or fake in any way. Despite what numerous critics and doubters had been suggesting online before the contest even took place, promoter Eddie Hearn, who's been around boxing long enough to recognize when something seems suspicious, directly and strongly rejected all the suggestions that the match was choreographed or rigged in any fashion. He emphasized in several interviews following the fight that this was a completely sanctioned professional boxing match with real consequences at stake, overseen by official boxing commissions who have rigid standards about these matters and connected to legal gambling markets worldwide, would make any fixed or predetermined result not just wrong but actually criminal and totally impossible to execute without hundreds of people being part of the conspiracy. Consider the complexity of trying to manipulate a fight like this with so many regulatory agencies, cameras, officials, and betting operations watching. It simply cannot happen. Hearn also referenced what he described as the most clear evidence that this was entirely real. The extent of Paul's double jaw break, which was a legitimate injury requiring immediate surgical treatment with titanium plates and tooth extraction. As Hearn stated directly, you absolutely cannot fake that type of damage in a professional fight. There's no possibility Paul would consent to having his jaw fractured in 2 places and undergo surgery just to maintain some conspiracy theory about the fight being predetermined. The medical documentation, the surgery, the rehabilitation period, all of it demonstrates without any doubt that what we witnessed in that ring was 2 professional boxers competing at the elite level, and one of them took a devastating and completely real knockout that finished his evening and potentially his career.